Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the Lizardmen in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires and why they are a downright awful race to play within the context of Warhammer 3. And not just because of the early game meta that dominates Warhammer 3, but just in general, which is not something you can necessarily say for some other races that have issues. Like, there are races that have issues in the early game, but at least have the potential to achieve a lot of power in long campaigns. Look at the High Elf situation, and mind you, High Elves are very strong in the early game as well. The first issue that comes up with the Lizardmen is the issue of jungle warfare. Because a lot of the Lizardmen campaigns, in fact, all of the Lizardmen campaigns, have jungle as a primary focus of their campaign, with the exception of Oxyatl, who starts over here in the Cast Wastes. And just gotta say it, when having a campaign in the Cast Wastes is better than all the other campaigns available for a race, you know things are not going to be in a great situation. Now, jungle does affect everyone that has to deal with it, regardless of whether or not their race is good or bad. But in particular, it does affect the Lizardmen, because one, they don't have any particular benefits to deal with jungle. Two, their opponents do have benefits, like if you're fighting dwarves, if you're fighting Skaven, if you're fighting greenskins, they are able to navigate the jungle better than you. And that is a significant downside. On top of that, one particular problem for the Lizardmen is that while their economy can generate a decent amount of money, their armies will outpace the benefits of that economy. And because the Lizardmen recruit slow, at least initially, because their casualty replenishment isn't necessarily the best, and because their growth and structures take a fairly long time, you end up in a situation where your few armies, are moving slow around the campaign map, and you have a lot of territory to cover with those few armies, and you're not even rewarded all that well from the battles, because the Lizardmen post-battle looting and sacking settlements, fighting field armies, is not that great. So all of these issues, just on a baseline level, combine to create a not so great situation. On top of that, a lot of the early game Lizardmen units aren't necessarily exceptional. Yes, we can talk about, red-crested skinks can work to a certain degree, chameleon skinks do work very well, though mainly that's an Oxyatl thing. But do note the cost. You consider things like red-crested skinks. Well, there are many units in the game that are quite a bit better in combat than these guys, that are cheaper to recruit for many other factions, that may also have a better economy. Now, SARs do work, but again, it is that cost situation that you're dealing with. Oh, but what about the dinosaurs? Well, the dinosaurs are even worse because they are even more expensive to recruit in a campaign than many other units that you have available. And here's the thing, dinosaurs are solid enough melee units, all the problems that come from having monstrous units, sure, but you lack siege capability, your range capability isn't the best, you do have hit and run range units, you do have some flying range units, but you certainly aren't a range faction, you're a melee monster faction, which doesn't work quite as well as you might imagine. A melee monster faction with really expensive stuff available. Furthermore, not only is their growth slow, not only is their economy going to struggle to keep up with that, but then you consider the hero situation. The only hero, on a general level, with the exception of like Krakar, who can get them easier, who can get other hero easier, or Nakai, who completely ignores the settlement mechanics of the Lizardmen, the only hero you can get in good quantities are skink chiefs. The thing about skink chiefs is they're not really that great in combat. Their skill line leaves a lot to be desired. In fact, the skill line of all Lizardmen heroes, they don't have special skill lines like other races have gotten, in Warhammer 3, and while they do have some tangible benefits, they do feel lackluster, at least the ones you can acquire early. Now for Skink Chiefs, until you get them on a Stegodon or an Ancient Stegodon, they're not really going to be that great in combat. Their main purpose is to provide you replenishment on the campaign map, because without that, you are certainly going to suffer immensely in a Lizardmen campaign. But even getting to tier 3 to increase capacity for the Skink Chiefs is a taller order for the Lizardmen at the very least than you might imagine. Certainly a taller order than it is in other campaigns. That is another problem. On top of that, there are certain Lizardmen units that do require multiple structures in order to unlock, or at least one particular structure in order to unlock. And this is not really great in their campaign. So a lot of their heroes, like their Saurus Scar veterans, their Skink Oracles and Skink Priests, they do require tier 4 to recruit in the first place or to increase capacity. And some of them, one of them does require tier 5 to increase capacity. So all of this is not a great situation to be dealing with, in particular because one of your best caster options does require tier 5 to increase their hero capacity. So overall, not a great situation in terms of recruitment, not a great situation in terms of availability of units. But it goes even further. Research-wise, the vast majority of races have moved away from the idea of requiring structures for certain research, except the Lizardmen. And Lizardmen research takes so long, that even getting basic stuff, by the time you do get it unlocked, or you unlock the middle tree, you've pretty much dealt with the majority of the challenge in your campaign. There is some good stuff over here, but it's kind of worth pointing out, like, consider this, the sequence of construction. Because your provincial capitals take one turn longer on average to construct than other races, then you're spending, in the best case scenario, 20 or so turns, in the best case, to get something that other races start with. You can talk about Nurgle, but Nurgle has other things that makes it work. And by the way, Creative Assembly has fixed that particular situation, or to some degree, they have improved the situation for Nurgle. And so requiring research to unlock a lot of these good things is an annoyance, to say the least. And you do have to go out of your way to get certain structures that offer no tangible benefits in order to get that research. For instance, let's say I want the Tablet of Monuments. It's a control building, right? That I'm required to get, but is not great to have to focus on that, especially when early on, building slots are limited. So you end up with an even more limited economy, more limited armies, more limited heroes because of this entire system. What's even worse is that the geomantic web is a pointless system. It does give you some benefits, but the actual rewards of it just don't really feel all that great when you're talking about the commandments. Also, their commandments are kind of all over the place. Like, many races have a simple commandment that gives them a decent amount of control. Lizardmen only gain 2 control from it, and flat out, that's not particularly great. You do get some other things available, to be sure, like, alignment of monuments and all that kind of stuff. But again, you're paying the price to get to the same level that other races have baseline, and so other races have the ability of getting other commandments available. So you have to choose between, say, getting a mediocre amount of growth for a commandment, a very low level of control or construction time, or some recruitment benefits, though crucially not recruitment slots. So that compounds the issue that Lizardmen do have to deal with in their campaign. is that situation of limitations upon limitation in research and structures and units and heroes combined with climate, combined with slow construction times, that makes them such an awful race to play. It also doesn't help that Mazdamundi's campaign is a piece of crap campaign in every way possible. That Tenuin's campaign, even though he is very powerful with a lot of really powerful effects, including some effects that genuinely help out with the inherent issues the Lizardmen have, like 20% upkeep benefits for all units in his army. But even with that, considering one other thing, Tenuin starts a global war between all Lizardmen factions and all Skaven factions. Now, this sounds great, right? Helps with alliances, except when a lot of these Lizardmen factions, forget the Skaven, right? They're your enemies. But when a lot of these Lizardmen factions, their AI just stops working properly and they stop dealing with what they're supposed to. Like, Oxyotl should deal with Kairos before Kairos becomes a mega threat over here. But because you triggered that war, it flat out breaks the game. Oxyotl's campaign lags. Even though he has the best campaign systems, you're paying for that in terms of FPS, which is not great as either. Gorok and Tic-Tac-Toe are okay-ish for all the inherent issues that the Lizardmen have as a race, but even they aren't necessarily in a great spot. And I think, as a kind of conclusion, the Lizardmen should be a lot more fun to play as a race than they are. They are a very important race in the lore. They're the guys who have saved the world time and time again. In fact, in the end times, Mazdamundi is saving the world from being obliterated because the Skaven blew up the moon, and if without Mazdamundi and the Lizardmen, it would have annihilated the world. So Mazdamundi, Skaven are the true Skaven are the true villains of the saying, and Lizardmen are the true heroes, as much as heroes can be. But you never feel that when you're playing their campaigns, and yeah, there's a lot of supposedly fun stuff that you can get access to, like, Dread Saurians, that kind of stuff, right? Lots of power, but consider this, a single Dread Saurian is insanely expensive. We can talk about the rogue idol cost, for instance, equivalent for greenskins, a big single entity. We can talk about the cost of a single rogue idol and all the issues that come with that, but greenskins have a much better research tree economy, units, availability of heroes, better campaigns, better climate, better diplomacy, better systems. And some of their campaigns aren't inherently breaking the game in the way that Tenuin is breaking the game, and the way Oxyotl breaks your game's performance, which is not great to deal with. And yeah, the geomantic web is a pointless system. Some of their commandments feel worthless. Oh yes, in order to recruit a certain lore choice, the Selayan Mage Priest, I have to go with the Rite of Awakening every 10 turns. It's not too horrible for the sake of recruiting a lord, but here's the problem with that. Let's talk about the lord option as the final thing. So you get the pretty solid caster, and theoretically you could make the argument that, well, you can just have this guy following an army. But while they have some special skill lines, not really choices, just the, certain abilities they can get for this, here's a problem with these guys. You're losing out on the generic lords of the Lizardmen. In particular, you do have these lords that actually do have unique skill lines. But when you're playing a Lizardman campaign, the only one you actually want to pick up is a Saurus Oldblood, and for no other reason than he gives you minus 20% upkeep benefit for Saurus Infantry and Temple Guard. Saurus, get the job done, far better than other units, but you do end up having that kind of problem to deal with. And when you're looking at, you do have some heroes, like, hero recruit rank, all that kind of stuff, that you can access in your campaign. But when you look at, like, a Kroxgar agent, yes, again, special skill line, certain benefits for Kroxgars over here, like physical resistance, but you never want to pick a Kroxgar agent, or you never want to pick a Red Crescent Skink, Because, yes, there are some benefits over here, like campaign movement range. You might think, oh, that's great, campaign movement range, casualties post-battle, casualty replenishment rate, or construction, all that. But 20% upkeep is 20% upkeep. And that is just a reality. And by the way, it's actually better if you're playing Krokar because he gets an extra benefit for the Saurus Old Blood. So supposedly the lore choices that you have, including a right added to it, is meaningless because, again, Saurus Old Bloods are the best army leaders. The only reason I have a skink over here, a red-crested skink leading this army, is because I confederated this particular army. Otherwise, I would have built an army with Saurus Old Blood. So overall, Lizardmen, they should be a lot more interesting, but the entire package is just, to put it plainly, as awful as they get. And it's not like they're a horrible race. They're not like Demon Prince level. They're not Nakari level. They have issues that do hold them back, but those issues don't prevent them from being able to win a campaign and being able to dominate the map. Honestly, no issue for any race does that, but just those issues make for a very, very, very annoying and horrible campaign to play, yes. Cosine, signing out. Stay tuned for more.